In a city where wealth blinds the powerful, one act of kindness sparked a revolution no one saw coming. Sarah lost everything for helping a stranger, Keanu Reeves, but the next day, her world flipped upside down. Before we dive into this tale of courage and unexpected redemption, let us know where you're tuning in from. Love stories that stir the soul? Hit subscribe. Tomorrow, another unforgettable journey awaits. Now, let's step into the storm that changed it all. Sarah stood behind the counter at Luxhaven, her hands trembling slightly, not from the cold seeping through her thin jacket, but from the bone-deep exhaustion of a life spent scraping by. At 58, she'd seen enough of this bustling city to know it didn't care about folks like her, hard-working, invisible, always one paycheck away from ruin. The restaurant buzzed with wealthy patrons, their laughter and clinking glasses a stark reminder of a world she'd never touched. She'd been a waitress here for 2 years, pouring her heart into a job that barely paid the rent on her cramped apartment. Tonight, though, something shifted inside her, a spark of defiance she hadn't felt since her younger days. The door swung open and a man stepped in, unassuming in a black hoodie and jeans, his cap pulled low. He didn't strut or demand attention like the regulars, just quietly took a seat in the corner. Sarah's breath caught as recognition hit her like a memory from a faded photograph. It was Keanu Reeves. She'd watched his movies decades ago, curled up on her old couch with a bowl of popcorn, dreaming of a life less ordinary. Now here he was, a Hollywood legend looking for a simple meal, and she felt an odd kinship with his quiet demeanor. But not everyone saw it that way. James Carver, the manager, emerged from his office like a storm cloud, his fake smile barely hiding his contempt. "I'm sorry, sir," he said, voice dripping with condescension. "We're reservation only. You'll have to leave." Keanu nodded calmly, reaching for his wallet. "I'll just get something to go," he replied, soft-spoken, no trace of ego. James scoffed, loud enough for heads to turn. "This isn't that kind of place." Sarah's heart thudded painfully. She'd seen this before. People judged and dismissed for no good reason. It reminded her of her mother, Ellen, a woman who'd lost her factory job back in '82 for helping a coworker fight unfair hours. Ellen had come home that day, eyes red but chin high, telling Sarah, kindness matters, even when it hurts. That lesson had rooted deep, and now, watching James humiliate Keanu, Sarah felt her mother's spirit stir within her. She couldn't stay silent. "He's not bothering anyone," she said, stepping forward, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "If he wants to order, let him." James whipped around, his glare cutting through her. "Sarah, stay out of this." But she didn't. Ignoring the stares, she grabbed a menu and set it in front of Keanu. "What would you like?" she asked, her tone gentle but firm. Keanu met her eyes with a small, just a simple meal, thanks. The room went quiet, tension thick as the patrons watched. James's face flushed crimson. "That's it. You're done," he hissed. "You're fired." The words hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. Fired? After 2 years of late nights, sore feet, and swallowing her pride? "What?" she whispered, disbelief choking her. "You heard me. Get out." For a moment she froze, the reality sinking in like a stone. She'd lost everything for doing what felt right. Her hands shook as she untied her apron, tossing it onto the counter with a quiet fury. She glanced at Keanu, his expression unreadable, then turned and walked out, the door slamming shut behind her. Outside, the city's cold bit at her skin, but it was nothing compared to the ache in her chest. She'd always been the one to lend a hand, covering shifts for sick co-workers, slipping leftovers to the homeless guy by the alley, and for what? To be tossed aside like trash? The unfairness of it burned. At Luxhaven, the rich dined on $50 steaks while she rationed canned soup to stretch her budget. She'd seen customers tip with $100 bills, then sneer when she dared to smile at them. That divide, wealth on one side, struggle on the other, had shadowed her whole life. As she trudged home, her mind drifted back to Ellen. Her mother had died 10 years ago, worn out by a world that didn't reward decency. Sarah could still hear her voice, soft but unyielding. "They'll try to break you, but don't let them." That night in '82, Ellen had sat Sarah down, a 16-year-old full of questions, and explained how she'd stood up for a friend, only to be fired without a second thought. "I'd do it again," Ellen had said, her hands rough from years of labor. Now Sarah had followed in those footsteps, and the cost felt unbearable. Her tiny apartment greeted her with silence, the peeling paint and flickering bulb a mirror to her despair. Rent was due in a week, $800 she didn't have, no savings, no safety net. She sank onto her lumpy bed, staring at the ceiling, fighting tears. Had she been foolish? Should she have kept her head down like always? Her phone buzzed, pulling her from the spiral. It was Lily, her best friend since their diner days in the 90s. Heard what happened, you okay? Sarah typed back, fingers heavy. Lost my job for helping someone. Feels right, but it hurts. Lily's reply came fast. Wait, Keanu Reeves? Sarah hesitated, then confirmed it. A moment later, Lily sent a screenshot, a blurry photo from Lux Haven, posted online. The caption read, "Waitress fired for helping Keanu Reeves after rude manager humiliates him." Shameful. Comments poured in. Who fires someone for kindness? Boycott this place. She deserves better. Sarah's pulse quickened. People cared? Her phone rang. An unknown number. She answered, cautious. Hello? Sarah, this is Keanu. Her heart stopped. Was this real? His voice was warm, steady, like an old friend. I wanted to check on you. What happened wasn't fair. She swallowed hard, her throat tight. I'll manage. I just didn't think standing up for someone would end like this. He paused, then said, It won't end like this, Sarah. It might just be the start of something better. Before she could process his words, he hung up, leaving her staring into the dark, wondering if hope could still find her after all these years. Sarah pushed open the door to her rundown apartment, the hinges creaking like a tired sigh. The dim light from a flickering bulb cast shadows over peeling wallpaper and a stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter. Electricity, gas, rent, all glaring reminders of a life teetering on the edge. At 58, she'd hoped for stability by now, maybe even a little comfort after decades of hard work. Instead, she stood there, jobless, her thin coat still damp from the city's chill, feeling the weight of her impulsive kindness crash down like a house of cards. She'd stood up for Keanu Reeves, a man she didn't even know, and now she faced eviction, hunger, ruin. Was this what doing the right thing got you? She sank onto the edge of her sagging couch, the springs groaning under her weight. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the distant hum of traffic and the drip of a leaky faucet. Rent was due in 6 days, $800 she didn't have. Her savings? A jar of loose change that wouldn't cover a week's groceries. She'd always lived lean, stretching every dollar, skipping meals so she could afford the bus to work. Now even that fragile balance was gone. The fear clawed at her chest. Where would she go if they kicked her out? A shelter? The street? At her age, starting over felt impossible, a mountain too steep to climb. Her phone buzzed, jolting her from the spiral. It was Lily again, her friend of 30 years, the one who'd shared coffee and tears through every heartbreak and hard time. Check this out, the message read, followed by another screenshot. Sarah squinted at the tiny screen. The post about her firing had exploded online, thousands of likes, shares, comments. This is outrageous, someone wrote. She's a hero, said another. Lily texted again, You're famous. People are furious at Lux Haven. Sarah's stomach twisted. Famous? She didn't want fame. She wanted her job back, her dignity, a chance to breathe without panic choking her. She typed back, fingers stiff. Doesn't change anything. I'm still screwed. The words stared back at her, raw and honest. She set the phone down and pressed her palms to her eyes, fighting the tears she'd held back all night. Her mind drifted, unbidden, to a memory she'd buried deep. Her childhood in a crumbling tenement, the kind of place where hope was a luxury no one could afford. She was 8, maybe 9, shivering in a threadbare coat as kids at school snickered at her patched shoes and free lunch card. Poor girl, they'd whisper, loud enough to sting. Her mother, Ellen, had worked double shifts at a textile mill, her hands calloused, her back bent, just to keep them fed. But even that wasn't enough. Ellen's kindness, her habit of sharing what little they had, often left them with less. Sarah remembered nights with no dinner, the ache of hunger, a cruel teacher in a world that punished the generous. That lesson had followed her through the years, a shadow she couldn't shake. Society didn't reward people like her or Ellen. It stepped on them, ground them down until they broke. And now, here she was, repeating her mother's story, fired for helping someone, just like Ellen had been. The parallel cut deep, a wound that spanned generations. She could almost hear her mother's voice, weary but resolute. "They'll make you feel small, Sarah, but you're not." Wasn't she, though? Small, powerless, disposable? That's what Lux Haven had proven tonight. Then a darker thought crept in, one that made her sit up straighter. She'd heard rumors over the years, whispers from coworkers who'd vanished from the schedule without explanation. A dishwasher fired for asking about overtime pay. A hostess let go after complaining about a customer's harassment. Sarah had brushed it off as bad luck, but now it clicked into place. Lux Haven didn't just fire her. They'd been tossing out anyone who dared to question the system. James Carver, with his polished suits and oily grin, wasn't just a petty tyrant. He was a cog in something bigger, a machine fueled by money and influence. She remembered a night months ago overhearing him on the phone in his office, laughing about cutting loose the dead weight. She hadn't thought much of it then, but now it chilled her. How many others had suffered in silence, their stories buried under the restaurant's gleaming facade? The realization fueled a flicker of anger, but it couldn't burn away the despair. She was one woman, alone, against a world rigged to favor the powerful. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Lily. "You're trending. They're calling for a boycott." Sarah stared at it, hollowed out. A boycott wouldn't pay her bills or undo the damage. She tossed the phone aside and curled up on the couch, pulling a thin blanket over her shoulder. The tears came then, quiet and bitter, soaking into the fabric. She'd done what felt right, just like her mother taught her, but the cost was crushing. As exhaustion pulled her under, she wondered if this was it. The end of a fight she'd never really had the strength to win. Little did she know, the dawn would bring a call that would turn her darkness into something she'd never dared to dream. Sarah barely slept, her night a tangle of restless thoughts and the echo of despair that had settled into her bones. The couch, her makeshift bed, creaked as she stared at the cracked ceiling of her dingy apartment, the weight of her firing pressing down like a physical thing. At 58, she'd faced plenty of hard knocks, lost jobs, lean years, the slow grind of a life that never let up. But this felt final, a door slamming shut on any chance of climbing out. The buzz of her phone had faded to silence, Lily's messages of support drowned by the reality of unpaid bills and an empty fridge. She was drifting towards surrender when a sharp knock jolted her upright. Who could it be at this hour? She shuffled to the door, peering through the peephole. A man in a crisp black suit stood outside, sunglasses shielding his eyes despite the early hour. Her heart skipped. Trouble? "Miss Sarah?" he asked, voice polite but firm. She nodded, wary. "Please come with me." Before she could protest, he gestured to a sleek black car idling at the curb, its polished surface gleaming under the streetlights. Confusion battled exhaustion as she grabbed her coat and a small bag, stepping into the unknown. The driver opened the door, and she slid into the leather back seat, her nerves buzzing. This wasn't her world. Luxury cars, mysterious summons. But as the city blurred past, a flicker of curiosity pierced her fog. Where was she going? The ride ended 30 minutes later in front of a towering modern building, all glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed wealth and power. Sarah stepped out, feeling small in her faded jeans and worn shoes, the driver's nod her only guide. The doors parted, and there he was. Keanu Reeves, waiting in the lobby, his casual hoodie a stark contrast to the grandeur around him. He smiled, warm and steady. "Ready to change your life, Sarah?" Her breath caught, her mind scrambling to catch up. I don't even know what's happening," she stammered, her voice raw from the night's tears. He led her to an elevator, pressing the button for the top floor. "You'll see," he said, his tone gentle but certain. The doors opened to a stunning office, floor-to-ceiling windows, a sprawling view of the waking city, and a group of people turning to look at her with curiosity. Keanu gestured toward them. Sarah, meet the team. He blinked, lost. Team. He leaned against a desk, his expression shifting to something serious. What happened at Lux Haven? I couldn't stop thinking. You lost your job for doing the right thing. That's not a punishment, it's a gift. I run projects, charities, organizations fighting for people who've been stepped on. I need someone I can trust. Someone with heart. That's you. Her knees wobbled, the words sinking in slow and heavy. You're offering me a job, Keanu nodded. More than that. A purpose. She shook her head, dazed. I'm just a waitress. I don't know how to... He raised a hand, stopping her. You stood up when no one else did. That's more than most can say. Her chest tightened as she glanced around, lawyers, organizers, faces lit with quiet resolve. Could she belong here? Then Keanu's voice softened, pulling her back. You're not the only one who's been there, Sarah. I get it. He sat across from her, his eyes distant for a moment. When I was younger, just starting out, I worked odd jobs. Construction, deliveries, anything to eat. One day I got stiffed on a paycheck. Boss said I didn't deserve it because I'd missed a shift. Never mind I'd been in the hospital after a bike crash. No one cared. I was nobody, and they knew it. His voice cracked slightly, and Sarah felt a pang of recognition, a thread of pain tying them together. That stuck with me, he went on. The way they grind you down when you're already low. I promised myself if I ever got the chance, I'd fight it. She swallowed hard, her own memories surging. Ellen's tired hands, her own years of bowing to unfairness. I know that feeling, she whispered. Like you're invisible. Keanu nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. You're not invisible anymore, Sarah, and neither are they. He gestured to the team, who'd gathered around a screen. A woman with sharp eyes, Rachel, she'd learned later, spoke up. We've got data. Thousands of workers exploited, fired, silenced. No one's listening because they don't have to. Big shots like your old manager bank on that. Sarah's stomach flipped. Thousands? The scope hit her like a wave. Dishwashers, factory hands, single moms like her mother, all crushed under the same boot. She'd lived it, seen it, but hearing it laid bare made her fists clench. How do you fight that? She asked, voice trembling with a mix of awe and doubt. Keanu grinned, a spark in his eyes. With people like you, you know what it's like to be on the bottom. That's your strength. Help us lift 'em up. Her mind spun. Yesterday she'd been ready to give up, a lifetime of struggle whispering she wasn't enough. Now Keanu, a man who'd risen from nothing himself, was handing her a chance to matter. She thought of Ellen, her mother's quiet hope that Sarah could be more than the world allowed. I want to try, she said, the words shaky but sure. Keanu's smile widened. Good, let's get to work. The team murmured approval, and Sarah took a deep breath, stepping into a role she'd never imagined. The despair of last night lingered, but it was fading, replaced by something fragile yet fierce. Hope, born from a shared wound and a shared fight. Sarah sat at a sleek glass conference table in a high-rise office, the kind of place she'd only seen in movies. Polished floors, towering windows, a view of the city stretching out like a promise she'd never been allowed to claim. At 58, she felt out of place among Keanu's team, sharp-eyed lawyers, tech-savvy organizers, and activists with fire in their voices. Just days ago, she'd been a waitress scraping by. Now, she was part of something bigger, a mission to fight for people like her. Keanu stood at the head of the table, his presence steadying her nerves. We're here to right wrongs, he'd said that morning, handing her a cup of coffee and a purpose she hadn't known she craved. But as the team mapped out plans, legal aid for fired workers, exposés on corrupt businesses, Sarah's stomach churned. Could she really do this? The room buzzed with quiet energy, papers rustling, laptops humming. A woman named Rachel with short gray hair and a no-nonsense stare briefed them on a case. A factory worker sacked for reporting safety violations. It's the same story everywhere, Rachel said. Power crushes the little guy. Sarah nodded, her mind flashing to Luxhaven, to James Carver's sneer as he'd fired her. She was starting to see the threads of a larger web, one she'd been tangled in her whole life. Keanu caught her eye, offering a small smile. You're here because you get it, Sarah. You've lived it. His words warmed her, but the weight of her new role pressed down hard. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, she was a voice for others. And that terrified her. Then her phone buzzed, an unknown number lighting up the screen. She hesitated, her gut twisting. The room faded as she answered, her voice low. "Hello?" A cold, familiar sneer slithered through the line. "I don't know who you think you are, Sarah, but you just made a very powerful enemy. James Carver." Her blood froze, her grip tightening on the phone. "Who is this?" she asked, though she knew. He chuckled, dark and deliberate. "You should have stayed in your lane, scrubbing tables where you belong. Back off, or you'll regret it." The line went dead, leaving her breathless, the threat echoing in her ears. She lowered the phone, her hands trembling. Keanu noticed instantly, his brow furrowing. "Sarah, what's wrong?" The team turned, eyes on her. She swallowed, forcing calm into her voice. "That was James Carver. He threatened me, said I've made a powerful enemy." The air shifted, tension rippling through the room. Rachel's fingers paused on her laptop. "Carver? Your old manager?" Sarah nodded, her throat tight, and told me to back off. Keanu leaned forward, his expression darkening. "He's scared. That means we're on to something." Rachel tapped her screen, her voice sharp. "Give me a minute, I'll trace it." The team sprang into action, whispers and quick glances filling the space. Sarah sat still, her mind racing. James wasn't just a petty bully, he was part of something uglier, a network that thrived on silencing people like her. She'd seen it all her life. Bosses who fired without cause, landlords who evicted with a shrug, systems built to keep the powerless in their place. James embodied that cruelty. A man who'd climbed the ladder by stepping on necks. Hers, her co-workers, countless others. The injustice of it burned, but so did the fear. What could he do to her now? Her thoughts spiraled back to her mother, Ellen, a woman who'd faced down her own battles. Sarah was 16 when Ellen lost her mill job, coming home with that quiet strength Sarah had always admired. "Don't let the bad guys win," Ellen had said, her voice rough from exhaustion. "They'll push you, break you if they can, but you're stronger than they think." Sarah had clung to those words through years of struggle, but now they felt like a lifeline. James wanted her scared, small, silent. She could feel her old self shrinking under his threat, the part of her that had bowed to every slight, every unfairness. But something else stirred too, a defiance she hadn't known she still had. Keanu's voice cut through her haze. "Sarah, you don't have to do this alone, we've got your back." She met his gaze, steady and sure, and nodded slowly. "I know, I can't let him win." Rachel looked up from her laptop, her eyes narrowing. "Got it. The call came from a burner, but it pinged near Luxhaven. And get this, Carver's tied to a real estate group that's been buying up properties, evicting tenants, and greasing palms to keep it quiet. He's not just a manager, he's a player." Sarah's jaw tightened. So that's how he operated? Power bought, with other people's pain. Keanu steepled his fingers, his tone firm. "He's trying to intimidate you because you're a threat, Sarah. One person standing up can unravel everything he's built." Rachel smirked, cracking her knuckles. "I say we hit back, dig into his dirt, expose it all." The team murmured agreement, but Sarah's heart pounded. This wasn't just about her firing anymore. It was war, and she was in the crosshairs. She thought of Ellen again, her mother's unyielding spirit. "Don't let the bad guys win." The words echoed, stealing her resolve. "I'm in," she said, her voice steady now. "He's bullied enough people. It stops here." Keanu's eyes lit with approval. "Good. Let's show him the truth stronger than his threats." Rachel grinned, already typing. "Oh, I've got plenty of ideas." The room buzzed with purpose, but Sarah felt a shiver. James wouldn't go down easy. He was the face of every injustice she'd endured, every time she'd been told she didn't matter. Her mother's words rang louder, drowning out the fear. She wasn't backing down, not this time. This fight was personal, and she'd see it through, no matter what came next. The city woke under a soft dawn glow, the first rays of sunlight piercing the gray haze that had clung to Sarah's world for too long. From her tiny apartment window, she watched the streets stir with a quiet promise. Something new was breaking through. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, notifications piling up like leaves in a storm. She scrolled through the headlines, her breath catching. Lux Haven manager fired after public outcry. Restaurant faces boycott collapse. Waitresses stand with Keanu Reeves, sparks justice wave. James Carver was gone, his reign of petty cruelty toppled by a tidal wave of voices. Ordinary people, strangers, who'd rallied behind her. But it wasn't just her victory. Reports flooded in, dozens, then hundreds of workers sharing their own stories of wrongful firings, inspired by her fight. She'd lit a spark that saved more than herself, and the weight of it brought tears to her eyes. She set the phone down, her hands trembling with a mix of relief and disbelief. Yesterday she'd been a nobody, a 58-year-old waitress drowning in despair. Now she was a symbol, a ripple that had turned into a roar. As the morning light crept across the room, it fell on a small wooden box on her shelf, her mother's keepsakes, untouched since Ellen's passing a decade ago. Sarah hesitated, then opened it, her fingers brushing faded photographs and a folded letter she'd never noticed before. Her heart thudded as she unfolded it, recognizing her mother's careful handwriting. "Sarah, my girl," it began. "I've always believed you could change the world. They'll try to keep you small, but you're bigger than they know. Make me proud." The words blurred as tears spilled over. Ellen had seen this in her, a strength Sarah hadn't dared to claim until now. She clutched the letter to her chest, whispering, "I did it, Mom." Her phone rang, pulling her from the moment. Keanu's name flashed on the screen, and she answered, her voice still shaky. "Sarah," he said, his tone warm as ever, "how does it feel to turn the tide?" She laughed softly, wiping her eyes. "Like I'm dreaming. James is out, and people, they're speaking up. It's more than I ever thought possible." He chuckled, a sound that felt like sunlight. "You did that, Sarah. But it's not over. Meet me at the office. I've got something for you." An hour later, she stepped into the high-rise, nerves buzzing. Keanu waited in the conference room, the team gathered around, their faces bright with anticipation. He gestured her forward. "Sarah, you didn't just win a battle, you started a movement. And I think you're the one to lead it." She blinked, confused. "Lead what?" He smiled, sliding a folder across the table. "A new foundation, Ellen's Light. It'll fund legal help, job programs, anything to lift up the people James and his kind tried to crush. I want you to run it." Her jaw dropped. Run it? She, a woman who'd spent her life on the fringes, was being handed the reins to change lives? "Keanu, I'm no leader." He shook his head. "You've been leading since you stood up for me. This is your chance to do it on your terms." The team nodded, Rachel grinning. "You've got this, Sarah." She took a shaky breath, her mother's letter echoing in her mind. From victim to victor, from powerless to powerful, she'd become the hero Ellen always knew she could be. "I'm in," she said, voice firm. The room erupted in applause. And as the sun rose higher, Sarah felt her old life fade, a new dawn breaking wide open before her. Looking at Sarah's journey, I can't help but feel torn. Part of me cheers her courage. Standing up to James took guts, and seeing her transform from victim to leader warms my heart. It's proof we're never too old to fight back, that one spark can burn down a rotten system. But another part wonders, was it worth the risk? She lost everything for a stranger, Keanu or not. And that desperation hits close to home. Maybe some battles are too costly, or maybe that's the point, real change demands sacrifice. What do you think, heroic or reckless? I'd love to hear your take below. Huge thanks for joining me on this ride. Your views keep these stories alive. Drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe for more tales that make us question and feel